Hi. Not sure if this is running yet, so I'm just going to talk to myself for a second. This is Andrea Schulman from Raise Your Vibration Today, and I haven't yet created a video for Raise Your Vibration Today, so it's long overdue. It's time for me to create a Facebook Live for Raise Your Vibration Today. So this is something I've been thinking about a lot, and I've been getting lots of questions about over the last, week or so in the DM, in my inbox, etc. I've been seeing this over and over and over again, where people are asking me questions about relationships and about why they're having problems in their relationships, why they're having a hard time attracting a good partner or a good friend, or why they have to deal with maybe a parent or somebody who's negative in their life. And it seems to be so pertinent that a lot of people are having issues when it comes to quote unquote toxic people. And so I really want to talk about that today, and I want to explain it in a few different terms. I want to explain it, of course, through the law of attraction, because that's really what I focus on, is the law of attraction. And I also want to talk about it in terms of quantum physics. And I am not a mathematician, so I don't know the math behind quantum physics. I'm not a theoretical physicist or anything like that. I'm more of an intuitive. But understanding kind of the basics of quantum physics has really made it a lot easier for me to understand relationships. So I'm going to try to invest in that part of the conversation as well. All right. So, one thing that I've noticed, at least in my world, and maybe you've noticed this too over the last few years, is that within the collective consciousness, there seems to be a lot more people who are aware of the idea of energy. And so I don't know about you, but I'm seeing this a lot. I'm seeing that people are very interested in the idea of raising their vibration, and they understand that certain situations have good vibes and certain situations have bad vibes. And so that's something a lot of people seem to be more aware of. Now, as a result of that, what I think we're also seeing, or what I've been seeing, is that a lot of people are of the belief that you have to protect your energy. And so if you're around somebody who's toxic, or if you're around somebody who's mean or unkind or unfaithful or anything of that nature, that it benefits you to remove yourself from that situation. And so there's a lot of stuff I see on the internet about this idea of staying away from toxic people, getting away from them, etc. And on the surface, it's not a bad idea. All right, so on the surface, it's not a bad idea. So for example, if you're in a relationship with somebody who's not very nice to you and who is giving you a lot of crap, it does benefit you to step outside of it, at least in the short term. Because if you're around that kind of a situation and you're being bombarded with toxicity, it's very hard for you to elevate your own vibrational energy. But that's only really the first part of the equation. Because unfortunately, with the law of attraction, toxic people aren't just landing in our lives all willy-nilly, but rather they're becoming a part of our lives because some part of us has attracted them. Now, this is something some people don't like to hear because it makes them feel bad. Like, are you telling me that I deserve this? Are you telling me I deserve for toxic people to come at me? No, absolutely not. You do not deserve toxicity. You do not deserve for people to be unkind to you. You deserve and you're entitled to be treated with respect and kindness and love and happiness and all those wonderful things. However, sometimes we're carrying beliefs, limitations, fears that are making us vulnerable to kind of a toxic attack. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, because removing yourself from the equation, like I said, is only one part of the situation. So for example, and you may see this sometimes where people are in a relationship. Thank you, Jelly. I appreciate that. Where you may find yourself in a relationship and you have a negative relationship with, say, a boyfriend, and you finally get fed up and you dump them. So you get the toxic person out of your life. But you find very soon that you are finding yourself attracted to somebody else, and this new guy that comes into your life turns out to be very much like your ex-boyfriend that you got rid of. So in this case, getting a toxic person out of your life may have given you some reprieve, but if you haven't treated what's going on inside here, whatever the fear or the limitation is, you're going to find that another toxic person, just like the toxic person before, comes into your life. And so it's really important to understand that what's going on in here is what we need to treat. And so I want to talk a little bit about how this relates now to the idea of quantum physics. And this may sound like it's like way out there. I'm not going to get too deep into quantum physics. I just want to give it a surface explanation. Thank you. I appreciate that. But you know, the idea behind quantum physics has really helped me solidify my understanding of the law of attraction. And this is why. When it comes to people, we're often of the belief that people are one way. So if I dislike my mother-in-law and I think she's a bitch, then I believe that she's always a bitch and she's always been a bitch and she's always going to be a bitch. But with quantum physics, what we find is that people are not just one way. They're actually many different ways. And so we have the opportunity to align, hi from Sweden, we have the opportunity to align with all different versions of the same kind of person. So you can align with a version of me who's very nice and polite and friendly, or a version of me who's very mean and nasty and not very kind. And so I want to kind of explain why this is the case. Now, if you have never heard of quantum physics before, I'm going to try to break it down simply, because I like to try and explain things simply. But quantum physicists, what they do is they study subatomic parts. So if they take matter, so they take, say, your hand, and they go into the innermost building blocks of your hand. So if you zoom in, you get to, you get into the skin cells and you look inside the nucleus. And if you zoom in further and further and further, you find that there are atoms. And the parts that make up the atoms are these subatomic parts, like protons, neutrons, electrons, quarks, that kind of stuff. So quantum physicists study those parts. And what they find is that those little tiny parts that make up everything, they don't exist just one way. When we're not looking at them, we're not observing them, it appears that they actually exist in a field. So there's actually an infinite field of an individual particle. But when we observe them, they snap into focus in one particular way. So in other words, you might be looking at my hand right now. This is the hand that we're observing right now. But simultaneously, quantum physicists would say, or at least some of them would say, that this hand actually is superpositioned in many different ways. So there was a version of my hand that we looked at that looked just like this. But at the same moment, there was a version of the hand doing this that we didn't see, and doing this, and doing this, and one that would, maybe had one finger or two fingers or three fingers up. They all exist simultaneously, but we only locked into this one. And so what's really important to understand is that when it comes to everything in our reality, it is all superpositioned. So there's all these infinite outcomes that are occurring simultaneously, but you or I, as observers, only lock into one of them. So that toxic person that's in our life that we don't like, we've focused on them in one particular way. So that's the version of that person that we're getting. Hi from India. Hello, Bryn. We've locked into that one version of that person, but that person actually exists in many different ways. And so people don't exist in just one way. So we can get rid of a toxic person in our life, but that's not really the issue. The issue isn't why did a toxic person victimize me, or why are they coming after me, or why are they inserting themselves into my life, but rather why, as the observer, am I locked into that particular person. Hi from Jordan. So that's a really important thing to understand, is that people are superpositioned. There are infinite types of the same exact person. So if you're rubbing up against a particular toxic person, it's really just because we're focused and locked into that person. So if this is something that you've been struggling with, or if you've been having issues with a particular kind of person who's been rubbing you the wrong way, or being unkind to you, or being abusive, or doing something really terrible to you, I think it's important at this stage in the game to start asking yourself a really important question. And the question is, why do I believe that I have to deal with this kind of person? What do I believe about myself? Or what do I believe about the world that's made me a match to this particular person? All right, so someone asked here, so do we generalize what we want, or do we need to be specific when it comes to the law of attraction? All right, so when it comes to the law of attraction, generalizing or being specific, I think the first thing that you really want to try to do is understand what you're putting out that's specifically attracting you what you don't want. All right, so that kind of a question, why do I believe I have to put up with this kind of person, is really important. Once we understand the answer to that, and we cultivate within ourselves a higher kind of belief construct, we can get more and more specific for what we want specifically. So let me give you an example, all right? Let's say that you found yourself in a situation when it comes to love where you're having a hard time attracting a partner. And you attract people, but they're not people that are very nice to you. Like they don't return your text messages or they string you along, something of that nature, all right? If you're finding that that's a pattern for you, you want to ask yourself a question, which is, why do I believe that I have to put up with this? Or why do I believe that I'm attracting this to me? And so you start looking into that, but ask yourself the question, why am I attracting this? So maybe you do some soul searching and you find out that at the root of this, you don't believe that you don't really love yourself, or you don't believe that you're deserving of love. And this is very common when it comes to issues of relationships. So a person may feel like, I'm not lovable, and so they find themselves attracted to versions of people that do not love them. So the person that's sitting in front of you reinforces that belief within yourself. I don't love myself, therefore I'm attracted to people who are not very nice to me, who are not very kind to me. Now that's the first and the most important thing to do, because it gives you a general overview of what's going on that you're projecting. Once you've identified that limitation, at that point what you want to do is to replace it with a higher belief structure. So if the issue has been that I don't love myself, we want to replace that with I do love myself. And so we start doing things that ramp up that kind of belief structure within ourselves. So we start treating ourselves nicer, we say nice things to ourselves, we remind ourselves that we love ourselves. And thanks to the law of attraction, the more we focus on a thought like, I love myself, the easier it becomes to believe that thought. So initially, it takes a little bit of momentum work. If you're really sitting in a place where you're holding on to a limiting belief like, I don't love myself, the transition from that to I do love myself may take a little bit of time, because at first it feels like a foreign thought, but the more that you practice it, the better it gets, the better it gets, the better it gets, the better it gets. Now, once you find yourself in a position where you love yourself, you're going to find that it becomes a lot easier for you to focus in and attract the kind of people that are going to be loving and kind to you, just naturally. And also, by the same token, if there's people who are toxic in your life, you're going to become very aware of the fact that you deserve better. And so you're not really going to find yourself as attracted to those kinds of situations. So I think it's a lot more of inner work. Now, as far as attracting specific people, I don't think that you really have to attract specific people. In fact, I think trying to attract specific people is often a form of limitation. It's a belief that I have to have this person this particular way in order for me to be happy. I find that when it comes to that inner work of finding that you love yourself or having higher expectations about people, the world at large, you're naturally going to draw to you people that are positive and kind to you. Oh, I have someone here that said that they did the rubber duck exercise and it worked. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, a lot of people like that rubber duck exercise. That one's a lot of fun. If you haven't seen that, that one's on my Facebook page. I wonder if there's anything else. I think I was going to say something else here. Oh, something else. When it comes to toxic people, you may find there's levels to this shit. So understand that if you change your belief structures to where you become more of a magnet to people who are kind and loving and positive and peaceful, it doesn't necessarily mean that people in your life from your past are going to switch for you very quickly. And so this is also a component of toxicity I want to talk about that's important, I think. A lot of times people will come to me and they'll ask, I have a problem with my mother, or I have a problem with my boyfriend, or a problem with my friend, and I want to change that person. I want them to become more positive around me. Now that's possible, but that is an energetic tall order, so to speak. It requires a little bit of work. First of all, you have to identify the limiting belief that caused you to attract that behavior in the first place, and you got to calm that down. But also, you have to understand that once you've attracted somebody into your life who you deem as toxic, you have a new belief. And the belief is not just that I don't deserve love, or I don't deserve someone to be kind to me, but also I believe that this person is toxic. So this is problematic, because if you've been believing for a long time that someone, whether it's a parent or a friend or a teacher or whomever it is, that person's an evil person or a bitch or toxic or whatever the case is, you've been reinforcing that thought. And it can be very hard to suddenly start looking at that person and assume that they're going to be very positive and very kind and very loving to you. So in these kinds of cases, I think it's very helpful, again, to do that inner work, do those questions. Why am I believing that this kind of person, I have to deal with this kind of person? Figure out the answer to that question. Work to change that belief structure within yourself. But understand that you may need to take some time with individual people. So in that case, stepping aside from the relationship or taking a pause from it, or just keeping them around but kind of at a distance for a while can be helpful, because it allows you to do that inner work without being bombarded by that expectation that that person's going to be negative. Oh, thank you, Heather. I appreciate that. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, divorce is hard. Breaking up any kind of relationship is very challenging. I understand that. The good news is if you're doing that inner work, you're going to find that the next person that walks in is going to be an improvement for you. So that's the positive thing. It really is just what we're putting out is what we're getting back from people all the time. So remember that, though. When it comes to toxic people, the first thing you want to identify is, why am I attracting this kind of person? Because shoving that person to the side is only going to shove that person to the side. But if you're still projecting that message, the universe is going to drop another person just like them in your lap. So we want to treat really what's going on first. Understand also that if you have long existing relationships with people, it may take a while for that person to change or catch up. That person may drift out of your life. They may drift back in. But understanding that also, if we've identified or labeled somebody that way, is that, that's how we're going to feel about that person. Thank you, Hans. I appreciate that. It's nice to see you guys live too as well. Well, this has been fun. This has been my first Facebook Live for Raise Your Vibration today. Thanks so much to everyone for watching. I'm surprised there's this many people on here watching on a Friday. I know everyone's ready for the weekend, I'm sure. So have a great weekend, and I'll try to do another one of these soon, okay? All right. Bye-bye.